Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for a presentation from the Urban Redevelopment Authority. They do a ton of really interesting and amazing work for the city of Pittsburgh. So I think we're really going to enjoy this presentation based on some of the feedback and questions that we've had from sessions past. So thanks for joining us tonight. Really quickly, just a few housekeeping and scheduling notes. So one, as usual, we'll try to hold questions until the end, and then we can raise our hands and I'll facilitate the questions at that time. When you do speak, try to give your name and the neighborhood that you're from, just so that we can give Director Walker a little bit of an idea of who she's speaking with. And my second note is you should have received an email from me today saying that we are canceling, or I should say rescheduling, next week's session. So next week on January 20th, we were supposed to meet with Emergency Medical Services and the Pittsburgh Bureau of Fire. Unfortunately, there is some chance that they will need to be called away on our next Wednesday evening. So we thought it would be best just to try to avoid any type of discrepancies there and reschedule for February 10th. So that's the day that would normally be our graduation, and then our graduation is pushed back 1 week. If you have any questions about that, concerns or issues, please feel free to reach out to me. Because there was a schedule change, I'm not being super strict or anything about, I'm flexible about, figuring out ways that we can work around that. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Deputy Director of the Urban Redevelopment Authority, Diamante Walker. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Leah. Good evening, everybody. So with that, I love doing these sessions. I think that the Civic Leadership Academy is such a cool concept. It's a way to connect public practitioners to the general public and provide some level of, transparency and open dialogue around how our quasi-governmental functions here at the URA work. We are an economic development partner to the city. And so I do have a presentation that will sort of walk you through our work, our mission and vision. I'm going to leave plenty of time for questions and answers because I really think that it's important for this to be a two-way level of communication. But I do want to make sure that you receive an organized presentation to really help formulate the picture of what the URA does and the fantastic team that I have the privilege of working with. So I'm going to ask you for a moment of patience while I try to pull up my slide deck here and share my screen. All right, is everybody able to see that?
Perfect.
Okay, I see a lot of heads nodding. Great. All right, so right off the bat here, we're going to talk about how, really the URA, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, is here for Pittsburgh. If I had to sum up the work that we do, we show up each and every day for the city of Pittsburgh. You are cohort number 7 of the Mayor's Civic Leadership Academy. And so again, I am just, very, very privileged and proud to be able to present to you today. So let's start with the why. I mean, it's very important when we're having these discussions that you understand why we do what we do. So here is a snapshot of our mission and vision. And so it says here that we exist to support the city of Pittsburgh's economic development goals, which are designed to create a city of inclusive opportunity for residents, stakeholders, and communities. That is saying a mouthful. In a moment, I'm going to show you a little bit about what the URA's previous mission and vision was. And if you were tuned into the work that we did, you would hear us talk a lot about increasing the city's tax base and, really brass tacks, nuts and bolts economic development, land utilization and, public financing. And what we discovered is that people are really at the center of what we do and why we do it. So we are re-engineering ourselves to be a more human-centered organization. And so when I talk about being a people-centric, human-centered organization, what I mean by that is that we want to see Pittsburghers reflected in our priorities. And so the goals that we share with the city of Pittsburgh are to create more housing that is affordable to the average Pittsburgher. We want to encourage entrepreneurialism and small business development at the neighborhood level, at the Main Street level. The focus is on promoting an inclusive growth and quality job creation mechanism. Pittsburgh is growing. Pittsburgh is a vibrant city. We want to ensure that we are including all demographics and diverse populations to ensure that everybody has a shot at making a good quality of life here in Pittsburgh. We are focusing on expanding neighborhood and Main Street revitalization efforts. Toward the end of this evening, I will talk a little bit about the Avenues of Hope initiative. Some of you may have heard of that. I'll talk a little bit about what that is and why it's been developed. And last, but certainly not least, we are focused on developing a talented workforce that is equipped with the skills of the future. And that is both an internal and external focus. So we are not only focused on, building a talented workforce outside of the URA, we also want to develop and cultivate the talent inside of the organization so that public service delivery is that much better. So our approach, we're talking about building strong communities through economic development. Well, there are a couple of different ways to do that. And the lens through which we attempt to do that is something that we've been terming equity economics. And so not talking about equity in terms of, assets and liabilities, but more so talking about equity in terms of fairness and making sure that we are including and thinking about all walks of life and all stakeholders when we're thinking about how to do development. And so that's meant to be redistributive and remedial, meaning that we want to redistribute the resources that we have to do the business of the public in a way that can scale both macro and micro. Looking at opportunity deserts and shifting those to opportunity neighborhoods. Everybody should live in a zip code that has some manner of opportunity. Now that sounds very altruistic, but we believe that it's a fundamental human right to have access to quality housing, good air quality, good water. Like those are fun. That's what it takes to really create healthy, holistic human beings. And so looking at, neighborhood wealth creation, how can we keep dollars circulating in communities so that that ecosystem is strong, so that we're retaining talent and accelerating growth in a responsible way. All growth is not good growth. We want smart growth. Livable wages. So how can we engineer our projects to create jobs that provide a livable wage? And preparing, labor force preparation and packaging, helping, folks to understand the talent that is available here in the Pittsburgh market as they seek, to come to our city. And then again, last but certainly not least, focusing on the minority and women business community, which is a strong aspect of Pittsburgh's economy. And making sure that we have an ecosystem that creates interventions that meet the needs, the unique needs of that particular population. And so if you think of the URA, it's an organization, so it has a structure. Now, if I had shown you this slide a year ago, you might have seen about 14 departments represented on this page. Our executive director at the time had about 15 to 20 direct reports, depending on where we were sort of in the organizational life cycle. And so we decided that we needed to simplify. Yes, we are a quasi-governmental agency, but we interface with the public, we interface with other private entities, we interface with the mayor's office. So how can we make this digestible? So we are organized into four sub-departments, which are central operations, which is our legal, finance, HR function. Everybody loves that stuff, right? Lending and investments, development services, and businesses solutions. And so, I, as the Deputy Executive Director, I oversee our central operations function and then lend some level of strategic direction to the other three areas. And so here, transitioning to executive leadership, we have a dual party leadership structure at the URA. Greg Flistrom is our executive director, and I am the deputy executive director. And so we work in tandem to focus on the city of Pittsburgh at large, and then we take that more microscopic look at neighborhoods and communities and what comprises those networks in our city. So a little bit about Greg. I'm not going to read his whole bio. You guys are going to get a copy of this. So if you are interested in his well-versed background, you can take some time to read that. He has brought a really refreshing perspective here to Pittsburgh around economic development, and is definitely pushing the organization to become more entrepreneurial and really thinking creatively about, when we put public resources at risk, how do we ensure that the public benefits from, those resources being deployed. A little bit about me. Again, I'm not going to read my whole bio here, but you guys will have this to reference it. I came to the URA in 2017 as the MWBE program officer. And at the same time, the board was doing some soul searching around the future of the URA. And it became very clear that our MWBE strategy could lend itself to a larger, more expansive strategy around how to become a more equitable organization. And so I always say that, I may use a few buzzwords, and we're all going to have to use that lexicon. But for me, it's about impact. It's not about saying fancy words that sound good. It's about making sure that we're doing the work in such a way that folks are benefiting. And if they're not benefiting, that we're having that dialogue around how to create an economy that is more fair for everybody. And so our governance structure, we're a public body, and our board members are appointed by the mayor's office. So Mayor Bill Peduto appoints our board, based on the strategic direction and the needs of the city. And so our board members serve 5 terms, and they have some really unique powers. They have the ability to approve projects, real estate transactions, to approve various programs, and in a pretty significant tranche of public and philanthropic and private dollars that are earned through the URA's various revenue streams and fundraising efforts. Our meetings are pretty consistently held at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the second Thursday of each month. That doesn't change a whole lot unless there are extraordinary circumstances. We just completed 11 months of solely virtual board meetings in the URA's 74-year history. We are approaching our 75th anniversary this year, in fact. And so here is our illustrious board of directors. You can see here very diverse representation. Sam Williamson is our chair. The Honorable Ed Gainey, who is a state representative here in Pittsburgh. The Honorable Daniel Lavelle, who's a councilman over District 6, which is the Hill District, which is the neighborhood that I am from here in Pittsburgh. Jody Hirsch, who has very strong ties to the community. And then Lindsay Powell, who is the Assistant Chief of Staff to Mayor William Peduto. So you can see here that we have a very engaged, highly skilled board who is very, very passionate about the URA's mission. Okay, so with that, I'm going to transition to taking a look back, do a little bit of reflection around, our history, what got us here. So if you've heard about the URA, you've heard about its relatively problematic past here in Pittsburgh, and some of its policies that have really created some economic challenges for certain communities, the Hill District being one of them. And so, we firmly believe that we are not able to move forward and chart this, this new trajectory, and to do this sort of reparational level of development unless we acknowledge the history of the organization and that we put the work in the proper context. And so the URA is very different than it used to be, 50 or 60 years ago. And these systems are made up by the people who are in decision-making authority. And so from a historical perspective, the URA was formed in 1945 by enabling federal legislation that allowed states to form organizations that could help to eliminate blight. and to supply sanitary housing throughout the Commonwealth. And so the city formed the Redevelopment Authority in 1946. And so from the 1940s to the 1970s, the URA was really focusing on transforming the city through an urban renewal agenda. You will learn that urban renewal is like a 4-letter word. And so because it essentially sought to improve the city and didn't honor the place and the people that were already in, that were already living and thriving in those areas. And so one of the most notable examples of this goal to transform the city through an urban renewal agenda was the destruction of 95 acres of homes and businesses in the Lower Hill, which was the cultural heart of Pittsburgh's African American community, resulting in the displacement of nearly 8,000 residents and hundreds of businesses. Now, as a Black woman living in the city of Pittsburgh who's from the Hill District, I can tell you that my family members were displaced from the Lower Hill. I am the URA's first Black female director in its 74-year history. I am the first Black woman to become the deputy executive director and serve as the interim executive director. Now, I don't tell you that to run off the litany of my accomplishments. That's not what this is about. It is to say that in the URA's 74-year history, I am certainly not the first Black woman or Black person to be qualified to take on a role like this. And I stress that because it is so important to have representation in these systems so that we understand the impact of our decisions. And so, as somebody here with discretionary and a lot of authority and power here in the URA, I'm always thinking about that historical context and that bridge between the decisions that were made then and the ones that we make today. And so this is a snapshot here of pre-development around 1935 in Pittsburgh, and then post-development late 1960s, where the point was one of the URA's very first projects. All right, so and if there are questions about that, we'll go over that, but I want to keep this moving. So our current work, what are we doing now? So we've learned from the lessons of the past. We still contend with that. It is working. It has become, a much different organization than it used to be. And so how are we strategically advancing our shared goals with the city to create a city of inclusive opportunity? Talk a little bit about that notion of creating housing that's affordable to the average Pittsburgher. So we talk a lot about affordable housing, but what is the income of the average Pittsburgher and what can the average Pittsburgher afford? And how can we use our tools to keep that affordability there? So one of those tools is the Housing Opportunity Fund, which is a portion of the real estate transfer tax that is diverted for the purpose of investing $10 million annually into the preservation and creation of affordable housing. And so it seeks to do 3 things: build new, preserve, or help out where it can. And so creating new affordable rental units or new construction, not only rental, but also affordable for sale home ownership, so that we're providing ramps out of poverty. Preserving and rehabbing what's already there. We have a beautiful city, but it has an aging housing stock. And if we do not intervene, we will lose that housing stock. And then there's that people scale level. So there's the bricks and mortar element. And then there are people, there are renters and homeowners, especially during this time of COVID, that are facing a lot of economic challenges. And so how can we deploy some of those dollars to help renters and home buyers and homeowners out during this time of economic uncertainty? And so we do affordable for sale rentals, help folks buy their first home, and make critical home repairs to keep folks in their homes, and then to help renters get back on their feet. And so our programs, I'm not going to read the litany of programs, but again, the programs are designed to provide those interventions that can either provide some economic stability to families that are facing a challenge, or to work with the nonprofit development community to create additional affordable units. One new program that we'll be rolling out this year is housing legal assistance to help deal with the eviction moratorium that will shortly be lifted. And we know that folks are going to face an apocalyptic level of economic tumult. And so how can we provide some legal support so that folks are not left to figure this out on their own? So it's $10 million per year. The city of Pittsburgh commits this funding annually. And I think it's a testament to the city's commitment to trying to reduce that 20,000 affordable unit shortage. We have a lot of work to do. $10 million is certainly not enough. And we continue to look for additional resources to try to remedy this. The CARES Act dollars that have come down have certainly been helpful, but more is needed. And so here are a few pictures of some of our Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation, which is our nonprofit development arm. I serve as the executive director of the PHDC with the help of our deputy executive director, Rich Snipe. And the goal is to essentially identify properties that can be brought back to productive use. We provide some level of subsidy and technical assistance to help low to moderate income buyers move into Pittsburgh's high opportunity neighborhoods. So encouraging entrepreneurship and small business development. Catapult Startup to Storefront. This is an example of a program that we piloted a couple of years ago to try to determine what would happen if we provided technical, financial, and rental support to small minority-owned businesses on one of the busiest corridors in the city of Pittsburgh, which is Penn Avenue. If we gave them a storefront opportunity, could these women, could these Black-owned businesses thrive? And so that was a bet that I sort of hedged a couple of years ago and said that if we provide the right level of technical support, we work with the right partners, that we can really make a difference. And so the URA partnered with what was then Circles Greater Pittsburgh, which is now Catapult, which is a nonprofit organization run by Tammy Thompson. And we supported 12 businesses through a cohort. And this incubator actually won the International Economic Development Council Award for the bronze category for equity and growth and inclusion. And so again, that was a $20,000 investment on the part of the URA. It has since gone on to win an award of $1 million from the PNC Foundation because it's proven to be that effective. And so here's a picture of their beautiful smiling faces cutting the ribbon on their very own storefront, which is really a model that doesn't exist anywhere else in the city, which is co-located retail. And this was actually before COVID. So we find now that folks are even more challenged to take on space by themselves. And so another way that we advance entrepreneurship is by providing business growth and recovery tools, low interest rate loans to small businesses, many of them minority or women owned, but certainly, anybody in Pittsburgh with a dream who wants to, need some seed capital to try to launch that business. We provide up to $100,000 through various instruments and tools. As of November 10th, we had received nearly $2.6 million in eligible applications, and we were able to fund about 95% of those applications. Promoting inclusive growth and quality job creation. So again, the Lower Hill, which is a very controversial project on the lower 28, one, because of its history, and two, because of the moment in front of us to really do development in a way that is restorative and provides real community benefit to a community that is, invariably been harmed by some of the decisions of this very same organization. And so the goal here is to develop the site in such a way that provides workforce development opportunities, wealth building initiatives, inclusionary housing, so some affordable housing, and then to figure out a way to ensure that that investment finds its way above Crawford Street, which runs across the Lower Hill and the Greater Hill District, and to deploy more than $40 million of tax abated investment into the Greater Hill District. And so that's very, very important. That is the work that the URA does, interceding on behalf of community to try to negotiate for the highest and best use of public benefit and community benefit. So economic recovery and growth, we've had to contend with COVID like everybody else during this pandemic. It has been, a moment for us to again take a pause and to evaluate why we do what we do, and how can we be more effective in showing up for Pittsburgh residents and Pittsburgh businesses. And so we created two fundamental responses to COVID. One was small business support in the form of an emergency loan fund, and then housing crisis prevention. And so I am, fortunate to work with a wonderful, amazing team of practitioners and public policy makers and public financiers who really, got creative in thinking about how to take the relatively nascent resources that the URA has at its disposal and how to re-engineer those tools into something that could provide some measure of relief to the Pittsburgh community. And so here are a few numbers here to share with you about our small business support efforts. That's nearly $6.8 million deployed. That's 280 loans closed, 282 of them minority applicants, 270 were women applicants. And why this is extraordinary is because in an average year, the URA does about 50 loans. 50 loans. So we nearly, quadrupled, quintupled our effort here to provide support, and it was not easy. And so here is a quote from one of the businesses that were helped, and it says, "The URA was a business saver for me. I needed that emergency loan fund cushion to get through that period where I was shut down. I was so relieved when that deposit was made. The URA has been amazing." And that is Jill Smallwood from J. Coco Hauling. And on the housing support front, providing more than $1.8 million grants to keep folks in their housing, 981 families assisted, and that's about $1,800 average. And most of those recipients were at 30% area median income or below. So really finding a way to show up for the most vulnerable in our population. 88% of those minority head of household and 78% women head of household. So additional COVID supports, providing ways for folks to get online, business education seminars, and that catapult startup to storefront, helping those businesses go virtual because we certainly could not operate that retail venue during the pandemic. And then providing creative support for business districts in the way of a sidewalk sales program, as well as some Biz Buzz grants to keep folks excited and energetic around some of these small businesses when we were not able to be in physical proximity. And so as an aside from that, so while we were deploying these various different tools, it became clear to us that while the URA can do a fantastic job of showing up for the small business community, at the end of the day, it is a large redevelopment authority with a mission on bringing properties back to productive use. So we wanted to create a vehicle that could maintain the focus on showing up for the small business community, even when the URA might need to pivot back to really focusing on broader, larger economic development interventions. And so we created the Invest PGH CDFI. A CDFI is a community development financial institution. It's basically, akin to a bank that can take on philanthropic dollars to essentially reinvest into vulnerable communities. And so we have a $15 million fundraising goal. It's currently underway. We were seeded by PNC Foundation in the amount of $2.5 million and continue to try to fundraise to build those resources. And so the purpose of Invest PGH is just to continue that strain of the URA wanting to maximize impact, to stay small, stay local, keep Pittsburgh at the center of what we do, and to always be mindful that equitable solutions matter. Okay. I am near the midpoint here, and I know that you guys have a break coming up, and Leah's going to signal us when we're at that point. So Leah, let me know.
Yeah, I think maybe we can take a break here. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, let's do 5 minutes and come back at 6:40 if that's all right. All right, thanks everyone. Okay, it looks like we're at 6:40. If people want to come back and we can get started again, Director Walker.
All right, so this is the second half here, and it's not as long as the first half, but we'll focus on expanding neighborhood and Main Street revitalization efforts. And I mentioned earlier that I would talk a little bit about a concept by the name of Avenues of Hope. And so you may have seen press releases about this, you may have heard about this. And so really, again, I've talked about it. The URA is a huge redevelopment authority with a focus on land recycling and public financing and moving major economic development projects. But it's very clear to the URA that we can't do that at the expense of community and neighborhood fabric. We want to be a part of building that neighborhood fabric, and again, keeping Pittsburgh feeling like Pittsburgh, but helping neighborhoods reach their fullest potential. And so without the negative impacts of displacement and cultural erasure. So Avenues of Hope is designed as a holistic model for rebuilding Pittsburgh's Black main streets. And so really the idea was born out of the tumult during the civil unrest during the summer. And so Avenues of Hope is certainly not a solution for all that ails us, but it does require a moment where we become reflective about how we're using our resources and whether or not they are both place-based and people first. And so this is a concept that's designed to intervene across all layers of what it takes to create a successful, healthy, and sustainable Main Street. We're going to focus on 7 major business corridors in the city of Pittsburgh, many of them that have not been invested in for at least between 50 to 80 years in any significant manner, which explains why people who live there are, not keeping pace with the growth and opportunities available in our city. It's because of lack of investment, not because of some sort of fault on the part of people. The goal is to invest in existing small businesses and residents, supporting the inclusive growth of those neighborhoods. And so the URA is developing a toolkit and tactics that will help to implement this initiative, to build on the work that the URA is already doing in neighborhoods, and really working with the city of Pittsburgh to sort of stack the tools that are available for housing investment, workforce connectivity, commercial corridor activation, renovating facades, and pushing properties to green, as well as creating impactful MWBE and small business supports. And so I talked about that 2-prong approach, both place-based and people-based. And so focusing on, building wealth through real estate development and ownership, public space and public realm improvements, the preservation of affordable housing, and then with people at the center, really focusing on that entrepreneurial support, the microloan program, as well as some of the city's new tools around the financial empowerment financial empowerment centers. And so the implementation and tools and tactics are to focus on the business districts and the businesses and storefronts. And so this is just a slide that explains what we do and some of the tools that we're able to use. And then when it comes to housing, looking at first-time home buyer supports, really fully maximizing that housing opportunity fund, and working in tandem with the PHDC to help with the built environment and bringing that affordable home ownership stock to fruition. And so this model is really developed around the revitalization of Center Avenue, which is essentially one of the avenues of hope, which has been an opportunity to create real estate development opportunities for local and minority developers, to do this in a way that honors and builds upon the African-American cultural legacy that's in the community, bringing the community's master plan that it designed and it developed to fruition using the economic development tools of the URA. And so it's really, the purpose is to foster an environment of economic empowerment. So we talk about this notion of restorative or repertory development. We talked about what's happened in the Lower Hill. And so we are trying to revitalize the upper part of Center Avenue, so that as the Lower Hill is revitalized, Center Avenue is also seeing the benefit of those investments. And so a few examples of those projects that came out of the Center Avenue RFQ, where we pulled together a team of qualified developers that are from the neighborhood to take on public assets and bring them back to productive use using public and private resources. And so Ham's Barbershop, this is at the intersection of Center and Kirkpatrick. Thomas Boyd, who's a barber who's been in the neighborhood running his business for nearly 14 years, is going to build upon Ham's legacy and take on the Ham's Barbershop. but for the URA revamping its entire request for proposals process, you don't get to position a business owner like Thomas Boyd to take on, Ham's Barbershop without those supports. And so we've partnered with Neighborhood Allies, who's been our technical assistance partner on the ground, and they have worked to help develop these proposals, help build the capital stack, and give these smaller developers the support and coaching that they need to get these projects across the finish line. So Avenues of Hope is a tailored approach. It's a new thing. It is the wild, wild west, and it requires a lot of concerted effort and focus and coordination. And so here is that wheel of change, or that theory of change, which is really looking at planning, strategic site assemblage, entrepreneurial support, project design and construction, the involvement of public space and housing for a community-specific avenue approach. There are 7 avenues, and we have bucketed or bracketed them into 3 distinct phases. One being the implementation phase. That means that these folks have done all the planning. They've cast their community vision. They are ready to implement. And so that's Homewood Avenue, Center Avenue, and 2nd Avenue. And then we have those avenues that are more in the early stage, or visioning and activation stage. Maybe there are a few businesses there. Maybe the community's been having conversations. So our intervention and our engagement will really be around planning and hearing community voice and positioning it to move to that next implementation phase. And then the final bucket is the scale and grow, meaning that this one is already sort of bustling and it has a lot of activity happening, but it needs a little bit more support from the public sector in order to scale and fully grow. And so, so that's essentially Avenues of Hope. And then here's another tool that we've developed to create equitable, community-driven results. It's a Neighborhood Initiatives Fund. The URA gets about $1 million a year from the city of Pittsburgh to invest in public realm and high visibility projects and community amenities. And we really didn't have a strategy for how we deployed those funds. If you knew somebody at the URA and you're at a pretty well-connected community group, you can pick up the phone and get some resources. Well, for me, I felt like, we need to have more visibility and greater access to these resources. So, I challenged the team there to think about how to make it more transparent and equitable. And so they developed the Neighborhood Initiatives Fund, which is to take that same $1 million and give all communities an opportunity to cast their vision and to request those resources. And last year, I think we provided about $658,000 in neighborhood scale investments for projects that are driven by the community and that matter to the community. And so last but certainly not least, I talked about developing that talented workforce that is equipped with the skills of the future. We are working on a few different workforce development initiatives, one directly connected to the Lower Hill, and that is the activation of a first source hiring center. We have been talking about doing this at the old Hill House Association building in the neighborhood. We've since discovered that the neighborhood actually has some workforce activity that is already burgeoning, and we don't want to duplicate efforts. So we want to support what's already happening. And sometimes you got to go out there and start something to really understand, who's doing what and how to do that stakeholder map. And so there's a fantastic initiative underway in the neighborhood around workforce development and doing, 360 care for families, both holistically and financially. And so we're going to try to dovetail with that activity that's already happening and figure out how to deploy there. Instead of, putting drywall into another building, we want to invest as many dollars as possible directly into people. And so that is the end of the presentation. If you would like to stay connected, you can connect with us on our website and social media. If you guys want to connect with me directly, or you want to have a conversation with me directly, Leah can make that warm introduction. And with that, Leah, I'm going to turn it back over to you for questions and answers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That presentation had so much information in it.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It really goes to show just all of the great work that happens at the Urban Redevelopment Authority every day under your leadership. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. All right.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions to start us off? Matt, looks like you have a question.
I feel like I have a million questions.
Good.
I guess off the bat, I mean, obviously it seems like $10 million is not enough, but it almost seems like the URA does way more than I would have ever realized. And I wonder if you guys have like any sort of public messaging campaign that you do, or any sort of public facing informational campaign, because I feel like a lot of the people I know feel that the URA is like just an unaccountable bureaucracy. And this has been like insanely informative. I didn't realize that your mission was quite so broad, I guess. So I just wonder if there's anything like that in the works.
Yeah, so for all the great work that we do, one of the things that we're not really all that great at is like, spending the adequate time to like do the storytelling and to toot our own horn. And I think that's really a credit to the URA staff. Folks put their heads down, and they know that folks might feel like it's a bureaucracy, but I can tell you, these are passionate, practitioners that could be working anywhere, and they choose to work and serve at the URA. And so if you go to our website, I think the website is, we're working on it. We're going to improve it, but I think that our newsletter is the most effective vehicle that we have to get the story out there. So I would encourage you to subscribe to the newsletter, which you can do right on the homepage of our website. And that will give you, keep you up to date on what's going on. And the other thing I would recommend is to tune into the URA's board meetings, which are now virtual. And even when we return to bricks and mortar, we will still provide, make these, publicly broadcast, because that's when you really get to see the board in motion, and you get to hear that passion, and you get to hear from Pittsburghers that are being benefited. So yeah, we've got a lot more work to do around telling the story. But it is a quasi-governmental agency that has bureaucratic processes, but it has the heart of public service.
Absolutely, thank you. Looks like Jacob also has a question.
Yeah, thanks. You had mentioned that previously the mission of the URA was to, or at least part of the mission was to increase the tax base. Is that what you said?
Yes.
I know that the 1% increase in the transfer tax was rather contentious, and I didn't realize that the 1% went to the URA. So that was news to me. I guess I wasn't paying attention before. I guess my question is, what do you see, being an economic partner with the city of Pittsburgh? If we get more people in here, more people are going to be paying taxes. Less people, hopefully, maybe taxes would decrease for people. So I'm just wondering, like, what do you see in your role as maybe like the number one issue to be solved from where you sit? Does that question make sense?
I think if I don't answer what you're aiming at, let's rephrase it. So the old mission that we would talk about was increasing the city's tax base. Why? Because when we increase the city's tax base, we have more resources to provide more public benefit, right? There is nothing wrong with fundamentally desiring to increase the city's tax base. But I think what has been learned and what we begin to realize in public practice is that, yes, you increase the city's tax base, but you also need to diversify the city's tax base. You also need to convert folks that are not able to participate in the economy into being a part of the city's tax base. And so, I think that, it has been, and so there's nothing wrong with that, but that's why we want to take a more human-centered approach, because, we are residents and we are more than just taxpayers, right? And so we don't want to reduce populations down to that sort of simplest term. And everything is about, did it create jobs? Did it create jobs? Did it create jobs? It's, well, are we working with our partners so that the jobs that are created are high quality jobs? Are we creating, ramps to education and training and other resources so that everybody is participating? Because you could increase the tax base and at the same time gentrify neighborhoods, instead of being very thoughtful in how you intervene in a neighborhood like the Hill District or Homewood, and help to very methodically and strategically build the tax base of that area by building up the people and building the muscles and the resources that are available to the people there. So I think that's the shift, not so much that, oh, the old mission was bad, the new mission is good. It is, one is intentional and one is not. If I didn't answer it, feel free to send me an email and we can converse.
Sounds good. I think that was a great answer. Karen, and I see you, Whitney, and you'll go next.
First, thank you so much for that presentation. That was incredibly clear and informative in a short period of time. And I feel like I've learned a lot. I have a quick question. As I work in state agricultural policy and have been watching some of the conversations that have been happening, especially in the last several months about neighborhoods of food apartheid. And what I'm wondering, kind of how is the URA involved in conversations about investment in grocery stores, investments in local farms, and kind of regional and local food development?
That is these are such great questions. Wow. You know, so if you look at our mission, I mean, we do not, so sometimes we have an indirect role and sometimes we have a direct role. You know, we really intervene at the place-based level, at the property level, you know, because again, you can't move real estate in a vacuum and be agnostic to the dynamics that are happening around it. You got to be thoughtful about that. So one example that I will point to, we have a couple of things. So with a lot of our land, we have created a side lot, farm a lot program, because we have a lot of urban gardeners and folks who have begun, you know, tilling the earth in a way that can provide food and resources to their community and their neighborhood. And so we provide both some grant level support through our Neighborhood Initiatives Fund, as well as provide earmarking land that can be preserved to do that urban gardening or urban agriculture. And so Larmer is an example of, you know, a garden that we have invested in with Miss Betty Lane. The Sankofa Village, I believe, has some gardens, so we've done a lot of work with them. There are also a few nurseries, I think, on the north side. I don't have the information in front of me here, but that's one thing. And so that's really at the micro agricultural grassroots level. Soil Sisters are a part of our Catapult program, and so we've been working with them to build that business. And Rainice Kelly, and she's amazing, and could probably teach me more about my teacher. I don't have a green thumb, so I've been killing plants since I was in first grade. And then the second thing I think is when you start to think at the macro level. So in the Hill District, for instance, the Shop and Save did not survive. And so that the Shop and Save was getting ready to go onto the private market, and the URA intervened because we felt like if we own the grocery store, we can facilitate a community process that will allow us to be thoughtful about how to bring a grocery store back or how to bring a retail presence back to the neighborhood that is you know, cognizant of what the neighborhood's desires are. If that grocery store were placed on the private market, you know, they don't have to be as conscientious, and it really is about soul market forces. So that's another thing. And we do a lot of engagement work and, you know, in facilitating discussions and doing introductions to communities and grassroots efforts around agriculture. It's not directly in our mission, like we don't have a food policy campaign, but you know, when there is a market opportunity for a grocery and the URA can play an intercessory role, you know, we make the decision to do that. It was a pretty controversial decision that I made back in 2019 to purchase the Hill District's grocery store. And I'm sure that folks had some consternation, but I was adamant that I would rather that asset be held by an organization that has to meet publicly before it decides to do anything versus leaving it on the private market.
Thank you. And Whitney, you had a question.
Yes. What's the qualifications for a URA business loan?
Great. Another great question. So we have a couple of different instruments. And so we have, back in 2018, the URA did not have first money in. So you had to have a project that had a gap, and we would only fill 40% of that gap. In 2018, when the MWBE program ramped up, we created what's called the micro loan program. And so at the time, it provided $10,000 microloan to a small business. And I think it was credit agnostic. So it doesn't matter what your credit is. You just had to work with a technical assistance partner that would help you put together the application. You had to create at least one job, and that business owner could be the one job. I don't have the criteria in front of me, but it was really meant to be a very low barrier financial tool. And it was run by a community-driven loan review board. So these are your neighbors and folks that you know, essentially evaluating your eligibility for the loan. When COVID happened, that microloan program became the emergency loan fund program, which went up to $15,000. Same criteria for $15,000. After receiving a pretty major infusion of cash, we are now offering $30,000 for the micro loan program and $100,000 for the micro growth business loan program. I will try to put links in the chat to the documents that tell you the exact criteria, but it's meant for those that would not be able to get access to capital from a traditional bank. It is designed with the needs of minority and women-owned businesses in mind, although all small businesses are eligible, but really lowering those barriers to entry.
Thank you. Larry?
Thank you. Way back at the beginning of your presentation, I think I heard you mention air quality as an issue, and Pittsburgh is not doing well on the air quality front. And I believe it's one of the most underappreciated problems because it's literally invisible. So people don't think about it. What is URA doing, and what can people and organizations do to jump in and help and maybe accelerate that work?
So a few years ago, we undertook an initiative called P4, which is those P's stand for people, planet, place, and performance. And so under the planet and what we were essentially doing is using the P4 lens to evaluate every project. And so looking at how that project scored on an equitable development scorecard. And so air quality and, environmental sustainability is one of the aspects of the P4 scoring criteria. So trying to get projects to be mindful of stormwater usage, as well as how it contributes to the fact that we do have air quality issues here in the city of Pittsburgh. It's why the URA was created. So it was created to do something about the air quality and the water quality. That was really the impetus for why the organization was developed and created, because of the smog that we were experiencing with the rise of the steel mill industry. And so what the URA has done in developing that P4 criteria is our board wants to know, whether or not the projects that they are approving are sustainable. And we've developed quite a few lending tools that can help small businesses, especially construction-based businesses. On our work sites, we've developed a requirement that for clean construction, and we provide a loan so that folks can get the necessary apparatus that needs to be placed on the trucks. Now, this is above my pay grade here, but because I'm not a sustainability subject matter expert by any stretch of the imagination. But the board really wanted to say, well, we can't control everything, but on our job sites, we want clean construction. And so, but we're going to empower these smaller contractors and these small businesses in order to meet that criteria. So we worked very closely with the county to develop a tool that will allow them to make the necessary improvements to their equipment in order to contribute more positively to our air quality. But that is a regional issue. And so every URA site, even if it is impeccable with respect to sustainability, that, like you said, it's invisible and it's mutable. And I think that what we need to show and demonstrate that thought leadership around, how we contribute to that, again, as a region. We do a lot with our own sites, like we use a lot of solar, and we're installing solar panels on our garages right now to just be more mindful and to get closer to net zero energy. We're quite a few years away from that, but as we refine our equity lens, this year we've begun talking about the intersection of equity and sustainability.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Allie?
Hi, Director Walker. That was a wonderful presentation, and I'm not an entrepreneur by any means, but I appreciated how you explained, so many of the access points that the URA has, for entrepreneurs, and made it understandable to people who, rely, on entrepreneurs as consumers and in their community, but who themselves aren't one. So thank you. I'm interested in entrepreneurship or supporting entrepreneurs who want to get into manufacturing, and manufacturing can be more labor intensive and capital intensive. So when I think about, there are Main Street projects that tend to concentrate on retail, and that's key, but I wonder too about opportunities that employ even more people, right? Because in manufacturing can do that. But the capital intensive nature of it can be prohibitive. And I'm curious if you think there are financial products that the URA has that can make, someone who's thinking about, manufacturing, make it possible for them. And maybe if there are a number of recipients of, financial products through the URA who you think are in manufacturing, whether that be small scale or advanced or whatever. Could you speak to a few of those? I'd love to hear who's out there.
Sure. I'm going to be honest. I can't think off the top of my head. We have such a robust list of borrowers, and I believe that a lot of them are listed on the website. We have a couple of different tools though that I think can provide some level of access to capital. And I put a link to access to capital in the chat. At least I tried to. I don't know if it showed up there. Because I can only see pictures right now. And so we have a couple of different instruments. We have the Minority Business Recovery Growth Fund that's up to $100,000 at an interest rate of 0% to 2%. That can certainly be used for to purchase inventory, to lease warehouse space. And if that isn't sufficient, then we also have a PETA loan, which is really a state program that we help to facilitate, which provides up to $2.5 million and $100,000 for working capital. But a lot of those dollars can be used for machinery and equipment. And so we've had quite a few businesses use that as a resource, especially if they are in that growth cycle within their business. And then we have, and we again work very closely with the state to administer a lot of their programs here on the ground. One business that comes to mind for me that's essentially a manufacturing business is CS Supplies. His name is Chris Bradley, and he developed a hand sanitizer solution, and was relying upon international markets to do the manufacturing, but needed local capital in order to start creating jobs here in Pittsburgh. And so he was one of our loan recipients and is now able to, and I think it's become even more popular with the current pandemic, but was able to really increase his supply chain by being able to get the dollars that were necessary to buy in bigger bulk and to be able to store his product and reduce his costs of getting that product out to market. But if I can talk to our lending team that really, you see my face here, but just picture 95 people standing behind me that actually make all the magic happen. And so I'm happy to connect you with our lending team that can really give you that more granular data.
That website was great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. I think we will loop back to Matt.
You said early in the presentation that the URA has multiple revenue streams, and I guess I'm just curious as to where all the money comes from. Obviously there's the 10 million coming from the Opportunity Fund, but just where does the rest of the revenue come from?
So I am going to again provide a link to our annual report because we rely upon a couple of different funding sources. We own real estate and have, various assets that generate, like we own a few garages that generate some revenue for us, like at the Southside Works. We rely upon funding from the city, from their capital budget. The capital budget, sort of CDBG dollars, that's the Community Development Block Grant,
Okay.
home dollars, all of those dollars where, these are mission-driven investments, meaning when we spend that dollar, we're able to leverage it with other sources. But it is essentially for civic or for social benefit. That's not really generating or creating more revenue for the URA. We send that dollar out, the community benefits, and we essentially go back to that well for more the next year to kind of support that. We also generate revenue through our through our fees and application fees for loan products, as well as our housing applications and bond issuances. So I will send a link to our annual report. Oh, Leah is so good. She's been providing links here. I just saw them. Okay. So if you look at that annual report, that will do a much more mathematical and scientific breakdown of where our resources, both where the resources come from, as well as where they're deployed.
Thank you. And yeah, all of these links are available on the URA's website, which is ura.org. And I will be sure to link to the specific topics of discussion that we have after class as well, so we can all follow up. Jacob, you have another question?
Yeah, sorry. And
No, it's fine. Go for it.
You said that the URA, well, it says even on the website that the URA is committed to creating more housing that is affordable to the average Pittsburgher. And I'm curious what average in this case means. Like, how do you figure that out? Who's that actually mean?
Sure. So we look at the area median income, and Leah, fact check me here if you need to. I think that the area median income for Pittsburgh is about $77,000 to $80,000, meaning a family of three making no more than $77,000 a year. That's 100% area median income. When we talk about housing that's affordable to the average Pittsburgher, we're looking at 80% area median income or below. And here's the reason why: because you don't want to pay more than 30% of your income for housing, right? And so I think that when we talk about our affordable housing issue, that it is really covering a sleeper issue, which is an income disparity issue. The more income you have, the more housing you can afford. And so what we've experienced in Pittsburgh is we've had a major job boom. We're ads, mads, and tech. And so you get a lot of folks who come to Pittsburgh, and they're going to work at Google, and they're going to make, a single person making $77,000 a year who's like, I'm just looking for a $2,500 apartment for, 400 square feet. That's what's affordable to me. Well, if that person is in our marketplace, the single mom who has two kids and she's making, less than $15 an hour, she cannot afford what that new incoming Pittsburgher is able to afford, because she's not participating in the economy in the way that Pittsburgher is. So the average Pittsburgher should not spend more than 30% of their income for housing. And we have folks that are well below the poverty line who are not able to find a Section 8 unit, who are neighborhoods are saturated. The affordable housing is already spoken for, and so they either have to choose between, in the extreme, homelessness or living in substandard housing. And so we believe by deploying these dollars in such a way that make that housing affordable at 30%, 60%, and 80% area median income, we're helping folks be competitive with this newly emergent, much more well-resourced Pittsburgher. That's the downside of rapid growth that has not been inclusive, and that's what we're trying to figure out.
Perfect. Let's see. Karen?
I am really struck by how kind of open and honest you speak about the mistakes that the URA has made in the past, and how clearly you're speaking about reparational development. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, and about like the change that has been necessary and connecting that to the history of the URA. Do you have any thoughts about why the URA was, so many organizations or departments in the world and the country are not able to communicate openly about that, or just personally make that transition? Do you have any thoughts about why the URA was able to do that and how?
I think that I think that the URA started placing a greater premium on the lived experience. And so I am a practitioner who brings two things to the table. I have some level of, pedigree, and I can do policy talk with the best of them if I have to. But I am from the Hill District, right? So my family came here in the late 1800s for economic opportunity, looking for, to participate in that industrial revolution. And we've been there, ever since. I've been very privileged to have, a family that has, supported me and, and really, really invested in me. But not everybody has been as fortunate. So when I speak from, because I talk to my neighbors every day, and so I know what the perceptions are of the URA. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is when I was going to take a job at the URA, the first thing folks would say was, be very careful when you get there. You're a Black woman. It's racist, and and it's gonna be so hard. And so I came in and I was like, I have to look out for the racists. Like I have to keep watching. Then what you find is that these institutions are just made up of people that have certain assumptions and barriers that have been cultural barriers, artificial ones that have been put up. And so, for better or for worse, I would say if you like me, it's probably because I'm from the Hill District. And if you don't like me, it's because I'm from the Hill District. So I've just had to come in with a level of candor and transparency and really challenge the agency to not dwell on the past, to recognize it and acknowledge it, and make better decisions and be more thoughtful about the resources. Not everybody's going to be happy about that. That's not a panacea for what went wrong, but our job is to bequeath a system and an organization that is better than the one that we inherited. I stand on some really firm shoulders, and I just try to bring that to the work every day. And I have colleagues who try to bring that to the work every day as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Matt, I wasn't sure if your hand was up from before. You're going again? Okay. No?
Yeah, I put my hand up again.
Okay. No, that's okay.
That's great.
Yeah, we can loop back around.
I really love what you were just saying, actually, and it's sort of lost my other question. And I wonder if you feel like you are able to be so candid and kind of take this position because you're not elected, like that the structure of the URA is such that once you're appointed, you're there for that 5-year term. And unless there's a way you can be removed, I guess I'm not sure about that. But I guess maybe that gives you some more like freedom, or you're saying like everyone won't be happy about this, where like you don't typically get that type of response from a political figure because they're trying to make everyone happy, which is obviously impossible. But do you think the structure of the organization has anything to do with that, like freedom that you kind of have there?
Well, here's what I will say is that I'm not a board member, so I am not appointed. I mean, I'm an employee of the URA, which means I'm evaluated annually on my performance. It's an at-will state. If Chairman Williamson wakes up tomorrow and goes, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. I mean, I am an employee. Our board is appointed by the mayor. Now, certainly, there's a political nature to the job, but I'm not an elected official. I'm a resident like everybody else. I'm raising my daughters here in Pittsburgh. My husband, has been here in Pittsburgh. He's a veteran. Like we're just everyday people. And so, the work that I do at the URA, I have them in mind, when I'm doing this work. And so certainly, working, want to work, amiably with community, with elected elected officials with various stakeholders. But I'm just a free person, and that's what when they asked me to take the job, I was like, let's talk about, you guys want me candid, unfiltered. I'm going to say exactly what I'm thinking. And, you guys want me to, they're like, that's why we want you to do it. Like, that's what we need. It's refreshing. And I really just don't know any other way to be. And if there comes a moment where somebody asks me to be less of this, then this isn't, you guys won't see me anymore.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen anytime soon.
You and I both.
Okay, it looks like we are cleared out for questions. So what we usually do at the end of presentations is some clap emojis because we can't clap in person.
You guys are awesome.
I thought maybe we could turn on some cameras so Director Walker could see that she's actually been speaking to people for the last couple hours of her time. So we do thank you for that. We thank you for your time and all of the great work you've done for the city of Pittsburgh. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. You guys have been great. And give yourselves a round of applause. It's amazing to see folks on a call at 7:30 wanting to know about public agencies. You guys are my people. So I thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right. You guys have a great evening.
You too. Good night, everybody.
Good night.